Sorry about that. Hello, it's Wednesday. It's the Wednesday after Warhammer Fest, which means that Golden Demon is over, and I finished the Raptors kill team. It was touch and go for a bit. I finished them at 4 AM on Saturday night, and then proceeded to not sleep until the next day at around 6 PM, meaning that during Warhammer Fest, and by the time I got home, I had been up for 36 hours, which was stupid, but I was being weird and obsessive. So, here they are. Let's have a look at the models first. Focus. Come on. There we go. So, as you can see, they're rubbish. That's not true. I'm really proud of these guys. I think they're really good. Especially their faces. I think I've done really, really well. So, I'm coming in at about 20 hours, 25 hours per model, depends on the model, of work for all of these in total, I think. Short version of everything, if you want to know how long each thing took. Every single thing took about an hour. At least. So that belt buckle, an hour. The helmet, at least an hour. The face, 2 hours. Tilt shield, an hour. Bolt gun, that was like 4 hours on its own. All of the leather, like 2 hours. Edge highlighting, in a grand total of about 6 hours of edge highlighting, when you include the weathering in there as well. Yeah, very, very time-consuming process. Not going to do the rest of the kill team to this standard. Not at all. I do have some more Raptors to flesh out the kill team. Just a bunch more intercessors, and I'm going to get... I've got the Eliminator to finish. He didn't get finished in time for Golden Demon. And I'm going to get some of the jump back guys with the big autocannons as well, because apparently they're going to be in elites as well, so I figure I may as well get a couple of them put out to the roster. But, yeah. So, the green recipe is Castellan green as a base coat over black, and then Zenithal highlighted with Strachan green, and then shaded, like shadowed, so that's basically pointing the model that way and spraying underneath, with VMA armor brown, which is very similar to Games Workshop's Rhinox hide. And that's pretty much it. It's then edge highlighted with Strachan green, then Ogryn camo, and then eventually Ogryn camo plus white, to make something similar, and I'm not sure if I still have it, do I? I do. To VMA duck egg green. I don't think there's an equivalent Games Workshop colour. It might be an edge paint if there is one. But it's just Ogryn camo plus white. And that's just for doing like the corners, the dots of the scratches and so on. And that's it. It's not a lot of colours involved in actually doing the armour. But it's very similar to the Raptors video that I've already got. It's basically just skipping the VMA US dark green. I think it's US dark green. That step that's in that video. And that results in a much brighter, kind of more saturated green colour than my previous Raptors colour scheme, and I much prefer this. The greys, that's just black and white mixed together for doing all of the greys. This bolt gun is my Deathwatch armour recipe, so if you watch my Deathwatch videos on painting black armour, then this is the same recipe, just with an extra edge highlight of Dark Reaper thrown in before the Rust Grey and Fenrisian Grey. And it just dots up all the way to white on the grey corners. The Aquila is just Rhinox hide, then Zandri dust, then Ushabti bone. All of the bone areas, so the skull on the shoulder pad there, the Aquila, and on the Lieutenant, who we'll look at now, his knee pad, his helmet, this on his leg, all of those bone white areas. That's just basically Rhinox hide if it's going to have deep recesses. If it's not, just go straight to Zandri dust for the next layer, then Ushabti bone for the final layer. and then mix in a little bit of white to your sharp T-bone for any really sharp corners. And that's basically it. Yellow is my standard yellow recipe, which you'll have seen in my orc videos. Red, standard red recipe. Leather, that's got a video up on Patreon right now, so if you want to see how I painted this leather, that's available to patrons. But it's very similar to my previous recipes, just slightly different. And the Auspexes were like 4 hours of painting each, so they took a while. So I'm quite chuffed with these guys. Here's the other Auspex, now in hand. The heads took about 2 to 3 hours each, depending upon if they had hair. The hair took about an hour in itself. The hair is actually the same recipe as the bolt guns. Oops, it's not focusing. Yeah, that hair is actually the same recipe as the bolt guns. For doing black, for doing shiny black. And all of the metallics are Vallejo Metal Color Exhaust Manifold, which is... nope, that's silver. That'll be this one. Which is this one. And then highlighted with VMA Chrome. That's all I did for the metallics. So look, in some cases, like on the bolt gun, I then applied a Army Painter dark tone shade over them, just in order to get a bit more contrast going on. But it's all relatively simple. It's just a case of being precise and trying not to make many mistakes. So these guys got me a Finalist pin, which are all my pins are at the back here. Hang on. Whoop. So I got 3 Finalist pins this year. 3 categories, 3 Finalist pins. And throwing things around, as is classic me. So these guys got me a Finalist pin. Warhammer 40k squad category was super packed with ex-Golden Demon winners. So past winners were all decided to enter 40k squad category this year. Andrew Wardle was in there, taking a bronze, and I can't beat I can't beat Mr. Wardle at all. So the possibility of me getting a bronze was just not on the table, as it turns out, because he entered, and he's really, really good, especially at things like freehand banners and faces. His faces are smoother than mine by a long way. His armour had a slightly non-metallic metal sheen to it, which was subtle, but it was there. I'm personally not a fan of that particular style, but it absolutely shows off good painting skill, and that's what Golden Demon's all about. So, yeah, it was a very hotly contested category, so it was lucky of me, really, to get a Finalist pin. But the amount of work that I put into these guys in order to get that Finalist pin, and I only got a Finalist pin, I didn't get a commended entry, so I wasn't close to placing. But the amount of work these guys took was ridiculous. It was so stressful. It wasn't really fun at all towards the end. It gave me mental health issues, it gave me physical health issues, and it put strain on my personal relationships. And it wasn't worth it in the end, quite frankly, to put myself under that much stress to enter a painting competition. And it's not something I'm going to do again in the future, because these guys got a Finalist pin in 40k squad, but my Nighthaunts, whom I entered into Age of Sigmar unit, also got a Finalist pin. And these guys, I painted all of the chain rasps in one day, and then spent one day on the Briar Queen. Not counting repaints, because I did repaint the Briar Queen once, but I didn't spend a full day on her. But these guys, who I painted on camera for the channel, like for funsies, basically, in order to play with, these are tabletop quality in my painting collection. These guys also got a finalist pin in Age of Sigmar unit, which was also similarly hotly contested. So the gap between finalist and bronze golden demon is so huge that it requires an amount of effort that I am not willing to put in order to achieve. Similarly, Snirk Sourtongue here went into Age of Sigmar single figure and also picked up a finalist pin, and I painted Snirk in about a day and a half, because I basically spent half a day repainting this flask in order to make it look like it had liquid in. Not something I'd ever recommend to anyone because it was time consuming, really time consuming, and it isn't actually that accurate. But yeah, this guy also got a pin in Age of Sigmar single figure, which is another very heavily contested category. And yeah, I didn't spend a long time painting this guy at all, with the exception of the flask. So it just doesn't really seem like the amount of stress that I have to put myself under in order to maybe place, but I'm still no closer to placing. I still haven't gotten to a commended entry, which is the next step up from finalist. I mean, yes, I managed to pick up 3 pins this year, right here, whereas in previous years I've entered 2 categories and gotten 1 pin, so I had a 50-50 rate. At least this year I had a 100% rate of getting to finalist. But it just doesn't seem worth the extra effort for me to specifically paint things for Golden Demon anymore. Especially since in the previous 2 years, all of the entries that I specifically painted for Golden Demon didn't even get finalist pins. So the first year I entered my big Orc truck conversion from a Goliath truck conversion, and I spent probably 60 hours painting that, and got nothing for it, nothing at all. Whereas the Deathwatch squad that I painted on the sofa watching the telly got a finalist pin. And last year I spent about 30-40 hours painting Alexei Pollux of the Imperial Fists from Forge World, including repainting his head like 5 times. And again, got nothing for him, but my Sepulchral Guard, who I basically dry brushed and then wet blended some cloaks on the channel, got a finalist pin in Age of Sigmar unit. So my conclusion, therefore, is that it's absolutely not worth me stressing myself out trying to place a Golden Demon, and instead just to paint things for fun and take them along to Golden Demon because I happen to be going to Warhammer Fest that day anyway. So that's where I'm sitting. I'm not killing myself to do Golden Demon anymore. Upshot of that is it means that the 3 months before Golden Demon at the start of each year, I will no longer be like dropping off in video content on YouTube and Patreon, because I'll still just be doing the regular stuff. I'll be doing my regular painting schedule, rather than dropping everything to try and paint something to a ridiculous competition standard. So, you know, it's a plus for all you guys watching, and hopefully it'll mean I'll enjoy my hobby more, because I didn't enjoy painting the Raptors that much. I'm really happy with how they turned out, but I do not feel like it was worth it trying to paint to that deadline. So, there you go. Also, you know, I hurt my shoulder, and that really screwed things up, but I still think I would have been up the night before, painting until 2 AM at least. So, because I'm ridiculous. So, what else? Warhammer Fest. Kind of a bust for me, really. Being a painting-focused hobbyist, and admittedly quite a good painter, who's not interested in painting big armies, the contrast paints reveal was nothing to me. I was just like, well, that's halving the area that Forge World has for their stuff and not getting me anything, because the contrast paints, if you've seen them, are basically just some really thick matte medium, some high pigment paints, and I don't think they're normal water-based acrylics. I think they're probably inks, that they'll be using. Plus some flow improver to even out the surface tension. And that's it. Like, they're not actually that special. I'm pretty sure that within a month of their release, we'll have recipes for how to make this on our own without having to pay Games Workshop's prices for it. And they're only really useful if you're a very beginner painter or you need to paint a very large number of models very quickly, so tournament painters, for example. Also, if you're doing army painting commissions, you're probably going to enjoy these a lot in terms of like knocking out a tournament army for someone over a week. It will let you do it if they don't care how good the models look, because all of the models that I saw painted with contrast paints, even the ones painted by the Heavy Metal team at Warhammer Fest, they looked awful. Just flat out awful. I get it. They're painted much faster, especially if you're doing a large batch of 20 models. Where drying time, by the time you finish slapping it on the 20th model, the first model should be dry. In those situations, yeah, you can knock out a large number of units. But in terms of their individual quality, they look awful. They look like they've been painted with washes, and that's because they have been. If you want to paint large units fast, I still recommend put in the investment, buy an airbrush. It's going to result in a much higher quality. You can prime indoors, and the coats will be smooth and will look nicer. And it will probably even be faster at doing base colours. Certainly if you are seriously into painting, you can just skip contrast paints, it's not interesting. If you're a beginner painter, sure, get contrast paint so that you can get your army painted, but just be aware that almost all of the skills that you learn painting with contrast paints are not going to be applicable to any other kind of painting, because it's a completely different system. It's not something where it's like, you don't need to learn how to thin your paints, you don't need to learn how to apply a smooth base coat. As soon as you start doing any of those things, if you haven't learnt them, you're going to struggle, and you'll be right back here on my channel watching my tutorials. And contrast paints don't really require tutorials. It's like, you open the pot, you give it a stir, you slap it on the model, and then you wait for it to dry. That's it. So long as you've got a good prime on there from their new special primers, which aren't special primers at all, they're just not pure white. Which, already, anyone that's using a non-Games Workshop brand primer, which for some reason I currently can't find I put it up there. Yeah, if you're already using like a Vallejo primer through an airbrush, then you're probably already using the grey one, not the white one, and that already goes on smooth, much smoother than Games Workshop's Corax white primer. So why spend the extra money on Games Workshop sprays, which are frankly incredibly overpriced for what they are? And things like this is why Games Workshop never sends me products to review, because they know I will not like it most of the time. And we'll just go, yeah, you can buy this, but there's also the exact same product cheaper elsewhere. So yeah, contrast paints, bit of a bust, not that interested to me. I have friends who will be using them and are interested in them because they've got armies that they've had for years that they've never painted, and now they're going to paint them. Good for them. But it's not for me. It's not something that I'm interested in, and so I won't really be covering it on the channel. Also, the recipe and consistency basically just seems like it's the same as Army Painter's shade range, which I think is a bit suspicious, because Army Painter's shades, I already rate those higher than Games Workshop shades because they work better, they don't sit on the surfaces as badly, but the consistency seemed like it was there, but just with a higher pigmentation, so it's more likely to colour things, and they do come in colours that most inks, washes and shades from other companies do not come in, because they're doing them in really bright colours. But again, I've got a suspicion that some ink and some matte medium later, you'll have basically the same thing, and it will cost you less. So, also you can't thin them with water, that's a thing, which means that you probably have to use their equivalent of matte medium in order to thin them, which is an extra expense. I basically see contrast paint being a very expensive way to paint a very large number of models relatively quickly. Your mileage may vary. Also, all my own opinion. So that's basically it. I've got videos coming up, so I've got How to Thin Paint Part 2 for Airbrush. I'm going to be recording and editing that this weekend, that's coming up. I've got Eyes of the Nine that I'm getting back onto soon, doing the Horrors and the Acolytes, and then the Sorcerer in that order, so it's going to be a 3-part series for that. Then I'm going to be doing 3 Space Marines, so I'm doing an Imperial Fist, a Salamander, and a Sons of the Phoenix, all voted for by patrons, and I'll be trying to get on those as soon as possible. That's all coming up. Again, we've got the How to Paint Aged Leather up on Patreon right now for patrons, so you can go check that out if you're a patron and you haven't looked at it yet. That's about it for now. Thanks for sticking around for the video. Thanks for sticking with the channel, even though the video content's been low because of Golden Demon. I'm going to try and get back on track soon and get the videos rolling out again. So thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for all the lovely comments on social media from everyone who was keeping up with my Golden Demon progress. And I'll see you around. Bye bye.